There are many speculations about what is currently wrong with Liverpool, but I'm going to give my opinion on it because I think it's a huge domino effect. And for me, Liverpool's problems all stem from their midfield depth and quality. James Milner in the place of Thiago Alcantara in this system at left centre mid is a major profile adjustment. Thiago for this team is a player who can receive off the back line well, evade the press, launch first time line breaking passes, pull the strings from deep, and he's actually quite an underrated player when it comes to the defensive side of the game. James Milner is not really any of these things. We often see James Milner being caught way too high in counter-pressing scenarios and just being bypassed by the opposition teams by simple 1-2s, and this was the catalyst for most of Napoli's chances. James Milner not only doesn't facilitate in build-up, but he's far too old to have this swift press resistance about him. He is a high-octane box-to-box midfielder, which is not what Thiago is. So automatically for Liverpool, we have a left-sided midfield imbalance. But the same applies to the right-hand side too. Jordan Henderson might not be everyone's favourite player, but he is a simple passer who has been tasked for years for rotating and covering defensively for Trent as he pushes on forward, often forming a 3-2 build-up structure, sitting in the back line behind Fabinho and Thiago, preventing Liverpool's wider channels and spaces from being exploited. And this is why we've seen such success down Liverpool's right-hand side, against Napoli and Manchester United for example, both sucking in Trent AlexanderArnold and Joe Gomez at times because they didn't have anyone filling in at that right back spot when Trent were to bomb on. Therefore they lost all the defensive security in that wider area. But Jordan Henderson could not rotate in that wide space when he was playing 6 against Manchester United, nor is he capable of playing 6 at all. And Harvey Elliott isn't this profile either. Harvey Elliott has really good technical ability and thrives in the final third for me. And we can see the major differences in their profiles and styles just by simply looking at their received passing heat maps. The contrast is quite frightening. This is no fault of Harvey's however. He is just not a right centre mid in this Liverpool team, but injuries just meant that he has to slot in there. So is this midfield imbalance enough of an excuse to excuse Van Dijk's poor start to the season or Trent's poor start to the season? Personally, I would say no. For me, I think Trent AlexanderArnold and Virgil van Dijk have been pretty bad this season. I think that Trent has been somewhat lackadaisical defensively. I think his overall scanning, awareness and communication is just off. And some of it applies to Van Dijk. I think he's been way too passive with the way he challenges dribblers and attackers when they come face to goal. And I know he is this type of standoff defender who judges players rather than commits himself into a duel. And for the most part, playing in a high line when you're sustaining pressure with the correct midfield structure, this is fine. But when the going gets tough and the pressure is on your goal and you're forced to be a box defender, you cannot be this passive in your own box. But Trent AlexanderArnold and Virgil van Dijk's individually poor performances are being heavily emphasised by the midfield imbalance. No centre-half wants to be ran at in transition with a 1v1 isolation with no midfield security in front of him. And no right-back wants to cover twice as much ground because he doesn't have anyone to rotate into the space that he's vacating to be the team's source of creativity. And I don't think Jurgen Klopp gets away from this spotless either. He is the manager, so he obviously knows what he's doing, but the lack of pragmatism and adaptability when you've got an injury-ridden squad and barely any available midfielders is just a bit stubborn for me. But when Liverpool's players get back to top condition and the new signings are integrated and they understand their roles within the system that he wants to use, then Liverpool will be back. But how long that will take, I don't know, because they had to get a midfield target before the season started and they failed to do so.